the call that shouldn't have reached him. Rain soaked the streets of the city, turning broken pavement into mirrors of distorted light. Beneath a flickering street lamp, a young woman sat curled against the cold concrete wall of an abandoned storefront. Her coat was thin, her shoes cracked, her hands trembling, not from the cold alone, but from exhaustion that had settled into her bones long ago. Her name was Alara Hale. Once she had dreams. A small apartment. A job that barely paid enough but gave her dignity. Then life had taken everything piece by piece. Her parents first, then her home, then the people who promised to help but vanished when things became inconvenient. Now she lived between shelters and alleyways, invisible to the rushing world. That night she had tried to do something brave. A group of men had followed her from the shelter. She had felt their eyes, their laughter sharp and cruel. When she turned down a narrow side street to lose them, panic tightened around her chest. One grabbed her wrist. Another blocked her path. She fought back, not strong but desperate. Someone shoved her hard. Her phone skidded across the pavement, screen cracked, ringing once before going silent. Alara crawled toward it, breath ragged, ribs screaming in protest. She didn't know who she meant to call. A charity hotline. A shelter worker. Anyone. Her fingers hit redial. The phone rang. And somewhere far beyond the human world, someone answered who was never meant to hear her voice. The man who picked up did not breathe. He stood in a quiet room lined with stone and shadow, high above the sleeping city. Candlelight reflected in tall windows that had seen centuries pass without changing. His name was King Alaric Nocturne, ruler of the Old Blood, feared even among vampires. He rarely answered unknown calls. But when the sound reached him, weak, shaking, barely holding together, something ancient inside him stirred. "Please," a woman whispered into the phone. I don't know who this is. I think I called the wrong number. I can't." Her voice broke. "They're coming back." Alaric's expression hardened, not with anger, but with something colder. "Where are you?" he asked, voice low, controlled, absolute. She froze. Who is this?" "Someone who heard you," he said. "Tell me where you are." She should have hung up. Should have been afraid. Instead, his voice wrapped around her panic like an anchor. She gave him the street name, stumbling over the words, coughing as pain shot through her side. "I can't move," she whispered. "I think something's broken." The line went silent. Then calm and final. "Stay where you are. Help is coming." The call ended. Alara stared at the phone, rain blurring her vision. A wrong number. A stranger. A foolish mistake. But deep in her chest, hope sparked for the first time in years. Alaric was already moving. Orders rippled through the night faster than sound. Black vehicles slipped through empty streets. Shadows bent around his presence as he stepped into the rain, coat untouched by water, eyes burning with restrained fury. When he reached the alley, the men were still there, laughing, unaware. They never saw him approach. What followed was not violence for pleasure. It was judgment. Swift, controlled, final. The men fled, terror carved into their faces, leaving behind a girl curled on the ground, shaking, trying to stay conscious. Alaric knelt beside her. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Alara looked up at him through rain and pain. Tall, pale, ageless. His eyes were not human, but they held no cruelty. "You came," she whispered, disbelief cracking her voice. "I always come," he replied, surprising even himself. He lifted her carefully as if she were something precious, something breakable. As he carried her toward the waiting car, she clutched his coat weakly. "Don't leave me," she murmured. "I won't," he said. And in that moment, a king who had ruled centuries felt his world begin to change. Because Alara Hale was not just a homeless girl. She was the beginning of something fate had been waiting for. Under the Vampire King's protection. Alara woke to silence so complete it felt unreal. For a moment, panic flared, her body stiffened, memories of cold concrete and laughing voices crashing back. But then she noticed the warmth. Soft sheets. A steady mattress beneath her. The air smelled faintly of old wood, clean linen, and something darker, richer. She opened her eyes. The ceiling above her was high, carved with elegant patterns that looked centuries old. Heavy curtains filtered pale morning light into the room, casting everything in gold and shadow. This was no shelter. No hospital. This was a place that breathed history. She tried to sit up and gasped. Pain lanced through her ribs, sharp but contained, as if carefully wrapped rather than ignored. Someone had treated her injuries properly. "You shouldn't move yet." The voice came from the doorway. Alara turned her head slowly. He stood there exactly as she remembered, tall, composed, dressed in dark clothes that looked less like fashion and more like armor disguised as elegance. His presence filled the room without effort. The man from the alley. The man who answered the phone. "You're awake," he said, more observation than relief. "Where am I?" Her voice came out hoarse. "My residence," he replied. "You were injured. I brought you somewhere safe." Safe. The word felt fragile in her chest. She studied him more closely now. His face was too calm, too unmarked by time. His eyes, dark, reflective, missed nothing. He didn't fidget. Didn't breathe like a normal person. "You didn't take me to a hospital," she said quietly. "No." "Why?" He held her gaze. "Because hospitals ask questions. And you were in no condition to answer them." That was true. Still, a knot of uncertainty tightened inside her. "I don't even know your name." Pause. "Alaric," he said. "And you are Alara." Her brow furrowed. "I never told you my name." "No," he agreed. "You didn't." Fear should have come then. Instead, curiosity rose, slow, cautious, undeniable. "How long was I unconscious?" she asked. "Several hours. A physician I trust examined you. No broken bones. Severe bruising. You'll heal." "You trust doctors?" she blurted before thinking. A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. "Only a few." Silence settled between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Alara became painfully aware of the difference between them, her tangled hair, borrowed clothes, the way she still felt like she might disappear if she moved too fast. "Why did you help me?" she finally asked. Alaric didn't answer right away. He moved closer, stopping a respectful distance from the bed. "Because you asked for help," he said. "And because no one else came." That answer landed deeper than she expected. Most people had walked past her, looked through her, pretended she didn't exist. This man, this stranger, had crossed the city in the middle of the night because of one broken call. "You didn't have to," she whispered. "No," he said softly. "But I wanted to." The words unsettled them both. Later that day she learned the rules of his house. She was not to wander outside alone. Certain rooms were locked. Others were watched silently by cameras she barely noticed at first. People moved through the halls, quiet, efficient, eyes always lowered around Alaric, but none looked at her with disdain. They looked at her with respect. Meals appeared without explanation. Warm soup. Fresh bread. Food she hadn't tasted in months. When she ate too slowly, expecting it to be taken away, no one rushed her. That night, she found Alaric standing by a tall window, the city glowing beneath him like a living map. "You don't sleep," she said, more statement than question. "Not often." "Do you ever rest?" He turned slightly. "More than I used to." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been circling her thoughts all day. "What are you?" The room felt colder instantly, not in temperature but in tension. Alaric faced her fully now. "If I tell you, you may wish you'd never called that number." "I already wished that," she said honestly. "Before you came." Something softened in his expression. "I am not human," he said. "I haven't been for a very long time." Her heart pounded, but she didn't step back. "You're a vampire," she whispered. He didn't deny it. 1,000 warnings echoed in her mind, stories, myths, fear passed down like instinct. But they clashed with reality. With the man who carried her gently. Who chose mercy over cruelty. Who stood between her and danger without hesitation. "You could hurt me," she said. "Yes. But you haven't." "No." "Why?" His voice lowered. "Because power does not excuse cruelty." That answer stayed with her. What Alara didn't know, couldn't know, was that eyes were already watching the house. The men who had chased her hadn't been ordinary. Someone had noticed her disappearance. Someone had begun asking questions. And in the hidden layers of the supernatural world, whispers had started. The Vampire King had interfered. And he had done it for a human girl with nothing to her name. That night, as Alara slept peacefully for the first time in years, Alaric stood guard in the shadows, jaw tight, senses stretched far beyond the walls.
We must leave tonight.
He had saved her
There
once.
is no other way.
Now he would
I
protect her
understand.
from everything that followed.
I will be ready.
Even from the world that feared him. The girl who stood beside the king. Alara learned quickly that safety came with a price. Not money. Not obedience. Attention. Within days of her arrival, the house no longer felt invisible. Vehicles slowed near the gates. Strangers lingered too long across the street. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. No one was rude, no one dared, but she felt it all the same. She was being noticed. And in Alaric's world, being noticed was dangerous. "You don't have to stay," he told her one evening as they sat across from each other in the quiet dining room. Candles burned low, their flames unnaturally still. "I can arrange protection elsewhere. A new city. A new identity. Running again." Elara wrapped her hands around her cup to steady them. "I've spent my whole life running," she said. "It never fixed anything." Alaric studied her carefully. "This is different." "So am I," she replied, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. He didn't argue. He only nodded once, as if accepting a challenge fate had placed between them. That same night, the summons arrived. The Crimson Court had called for its king. The hall was vast, stone pillars rising like ancient trees, banners stitched with sigils older than nations. Vampires filled the chamber, their presence heavy, powerful, restrained. When Alaric entered, silence fell instantly. And then came the shock. He was not alone. Elara walked beside him. Her steps were careful, her posture straight, her borrowed dress simple but clean. She felt every stare, every whisper, every unspoken judgment pressing down on her. Human. Weak. Temporary. She lifted her chin anyway. "This is highly irregular," one of the elders said coldly. "You bring a human into our court?" Alaric's voice carried without effort. "I bring someone under my protection." Murmurs rippled through the room. "She is nothing," another voice sneered. "A burden." Before Alaric could respond, Elara spoke. "I am not nothing." The hall stilled. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't beg. She simply met the elder's gaze, hands shaking but eyes steady. "I didn't ask to be here," she continued. "But I didn't ask to be hunted either. I was hurt because no one thought I mattered." "He did." Gasps echoed softly. No human had ever spoken in the Crimson Court without permission. Alaric turned to her, something like pride flickering in his eyes. "She stands with me," he said, final and absolute. "And anyone who challenges her challenges the crown." That ended the discussion. But it began something else. In the days that followed, Elara became a subject of fascination and resentment. Some vampires watched her with open hostility. Others with curiosity. A few with something resembling awe. Humans did not survive long in their world. Humans did not stand beside kings. "You shouldn't provoke them," Alaric told her quietly after one tense meeting. "I wasn't trying to," she replied. "I was just telling the truth." He regarded her for a long moment. "Truth is the most dangerous thing in my world. I'm not afraid of it anymore." That honesty unsettled him more than fear ever could. The attack came without warning. They struck just before dawn, when guards changed and shadows stretched longest. A group of rogue vampires breached the outer perimeter, fast, reckless, desperate. Elara heard the crash before she saw anything. "Stay here," Alaric ordered, already moving. "No," she said instantly. He turned. "Elara." "I won't hide," she said. "Not again." He hesitated, just long enough for danger to close in. One of the attackers burst through the corridor, fangs bared, eyes wild. Alaric moved, but Elara was faster than fear. She grabbed the nearest object, a ceremonial blade mounted on the wall, and held it out, shaking but unyielding. "Stop," she said. The vampire laughed. "You think that will save you?" "No," she replied. "But I think this will." She spoke a single word. Ancient. Sure. Heavy with meaning. The air shifted. The vampire froze mid-step, eyes wide with recognition and terror. Alaric stared at her. No human should know that word. The attacker fled without another sound. Silence crashed over the hall. "What did you just say?" Alaric asked slowly. Elara looked down at her hands, confused. I don't know. It just felt familiar. Familiar. Like a memory older than her own life. The truth settled between them like a thunderclap. She was not ordinary. She never had been. And the Vampire King realized something that night, something that changed everything. Elara Hale was not just under his protection. She was bound to his fate. The secret written in her blood. The word Elara had spoken did not fade when the echoes in the hall did. It lingered. In the stone. In the air. In Alaric's mind. By nightfall, the Crimson Court was no longer whispering, it was divided. "No human speaks the tongue of the first blood," one elder hissed, pacing before the council chamber. "It predates our covenants. Predates our laws." Alaric stood unmoving at the head of the chamber, his expression carved from restraint. "And yet she did. Then she is a threat. She is under my protection." "Your protection has limits, Your Majesty," another elder warned. If she carries ancient power, others will come for her. Hunters. Rival courts. Even our own. Alaric's gaze darkened. Let them come. Elara, meanwhile, sat alone in the garden courtyard, staring at her hands like they might answer questions she was afraid to ask. I didn't mean to do that, she said softly when Alaric joined her. I wasn't trying to be brave or special or anything like that. I know, he replied. That somehow made it worse. What does it mean? She asked. The word. Alaric sat beside her, leaving space between them. It was a command. One used only by the first bloodline, those bound to vampire royalty before kingdoms, before crowns. She swallowed. I'm human. Yes. But some humans were chosen, he said carefully. Their blood altered. Their lineage hidden to protect them. Her breath caught. Chosen for what? He looked at her then, not as a king, not as a protector, but as a man carrying a truth too heavy for one night. To stand beside us, he said. Not beneath. That night Elara dreamed. She stood in a hall of fire and moonlight, her reflection fractured across obsidian floors. A woman who looked like her, but stronger, older, reached out from the shadows. Do not kneel, the woman said. You were never meant to. Elara woke with a gasp, heart racing. And with it came memories that weren't hers. Ancient chants. Burning cities. A crown not made of gold but of oath and blood. She stumbled into the corridor, breath shaking, and nearly collided with Alaric. You felt it too, he said quietly. I don't understand, she whispered. Why me? Alaric's voice softened. Because power hides where cruelty least expects it. The attack came before dawn. This time it wasn't rogues. It was an assassin sent by a rival court, silent, precise, deadly. He bypassed wards meant to stop armies and reached Elara's door in seconds. Alaric felt it the instant blood intent crossed his territory. He arrived too late. The blade was already raised. Alaric! Elara cried. He moved faster than thought, but not fast enough. The assassin lunged. Elara didn't scream. She stepped forward. Enough, she said. The word wasn't loud, but it broke the room. The assassin collapsed mid-strike, gasping as invisible force crushed him to the floor. Alaric stood frozen. She had done it again. Without fear. Without hesitation. Without knowing how. He disarmed the assassin and turned to her, hands trembling, not from weakness but from something far more dangerous. You could have been killed, he said tightly. So could you, she shot back. But you never stop. Silence stretched between them. Then quietly, I don't want this power if it makes me a weapon. Alaric stepped closer. You are not a weapon. What am I then? He lifted her chin gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. You are a choice, he said. One I would make again even knowing the cost. The space between them felt charged, fragile. This is why I shouldn't stay, she whispered. This is why you must, he replied. The council convened at sunset. Their verdict was brutal. Elara Hale is too dangerous to remain unbound, an elder declared. She must be placed under oath or removed. Removed. The word hung heavy. Alaric's voice cut through the chamber like steel. Touch her and you declare war. Then war it is, another elder said coldly. That night, as storm clouds gathered over the city, Elara stood on the balcony watching lightning tear the sky apart. I never wanted to be important, she said softly. Alaric stepped behind her, close but not touching. Neither did I. She turned to face him, eyes shining with fear and resolve. If staying puts everyone at risk. I will risk everything, he said without hesitation. Her breath caught. For the first time she saw it clearly. Not protection. Not duty. Love, quiet, terrifying, and undeniable. The queen who rose from the shadows. The storm did not wait for permission. Thunder rolled over the city as if the sky itself had chosen sides, lightning tearing silver scars through the clouds. Inside the ancient halls, the Crimson Court gathered one final time, not in whispers, not in doubt, but in open defiance. Elara stood at the center of it all. She no longer trembled. Fear was still there, yes, but it no longer ruled her. Too much had been taken from her life by fear. She would not give it anything more. You cannot protect her forever, an elder said, voice sharp with desperation. Power like hers destabilizes everything we've built. Alaric stepped forward, his presence pressing against the room like gravity. What you've built, he said calmly, rests on cruelty disguised as order. A ripple of outrage moved through the court. She is human, another elder snapped. She will age. She will weaken. She will die. Elara lifted her chin. So will your empires. Silence fell. She hadn't planned to speak, but truth had a way of choosing its own moment. I was nothing to the world you're afraid of, she continued. Poor. Homeless. Easy to hurt. Easy to ignore. If power scares you now, it's not because I have it, it's because I won't let it be used the way you do. Murmurs spread. Not anger this time. Recognition. Alaric looked at her like the centuries had finally led him somewhere worth standing. The first strike came from within. An elder lunged, fast, desperate, magic coiling around his hands. Guards moved too late. Elara didn't. She stepped forward, placing herself between the threat and the throne. No, she said. The word didn't echo. It ended things. The magic collapsed inward, snapping back on its source. The elder fell to his knees, powerless, exposed, undone by his own intent. Justice, not violence. The court watched in stunned silence. She chooses restraint, someone whispered. And strength, another replied. Alaric turned to the remaining elders, voice ringing with finality. This ends now. What followed was not a battle, it was a reckoning. Those who had abused power were stripped of it. Those who had hunted humans were exposed. Treaties rewritten in blood and oath, not fear. The Crimson Court, ancient and unchanging, was forced to look at itself, and yield. By dawn the storm had broken. So had the old world. Later, in the quiet after everything, Elara stood on the highest balcony of the estate, wrapped in the early light of morning. The city below breathed, unaware that history had shifted overnight. Alaric joined her, the weight of kingship heavy, but lighter than it had ever been. They want to name you, he said. Titles? Os. A place beside the crown. She turned to him. What do you want? He met her gaze without armor, without distance. I want you to choose freely. Not because you're protected. Not because you're powerful. Because you want to stay. She thought of the alley. The cold. The phone call made with shaking hands. Then she smiled, soft, certain. I already chose, she said. Slowly, deliberately she took his hand. Gasps rose from below as the court watched from the terrace. Watched the vampire king bow his head, not in submission but in respect. Elara hail, he said, voice low and steady. Stand with me, not above, not beneath. Beside. She squeezed his hand. Only if we change things. His lips curved into a smile the world had never seen. Together. Weeks passed. Elara did not vanish into luxury. She rebuilt. Shelters were funded. Laws enforced. Hunters punished. Humans protected, not as pets, not as prey but as people. And at Alaric's side she became something no one had expected. A queen who listened. A queen who remembered hunger. A queen who knew that true power was choosing mercy when vengeance was easier. One evening, as stars spilled across the sky, Alaric found her in the garden where it had all begun. You never asked for immortality, he said quietly. She smiled. I asked for safety. And love. She turned to face him, eyes bright. That came when you answered the phone. He laughed softly, an unfamiliar sound, warm and human. Elara, he said, taking her hands. I love you. Not as a king. Not as a protector. As a man who was lost until you called. She rose onto her toes and kissed him, slow, sure, unafraid. I love you too, she whispered. And I'm not afraid of what comes next. He rested his forehead against hers. Neither am I. Far below, the city glowed with life. And above it all, a new story settled into place, not one of monsters and victims but of choice, justice and love. She had been homeless. She had been powerless. She had been unheard. Now she was queen. And the world would never forget the night a single call changed everything. It ended things. The magic collapsed inward, snapping back on its source. The elder fell to his knees, powerless, exposed, undone by his own intent. Justice, not violence. The court watched in stunned silence. She chooses restraint, someone whispered. And strength, another replied. Alaric turned to the remaining elders, voice ringing with finality. This ends now. What followed was not a battle, it was a reckoning. Those who had abused power were stripped of it. Those who had hunted humans were exposed. Treaties rewritten in blood and oath, not fear. The Crimson Court, ancient and unchanging, was forced to look at itself, and yield. By dawn the storm had broken. So had the old world. Later, in the quiet after everything, Elara stood on the highest balcony of the estate, wrapped in the early light of morning. The city below breathed, unaware that history had shifted overnight. Alaric joined her, the weight of kingship heavy, but lighter than it had ever been. "They want to name you," he said. "Titles? Os. A place beside the crown." She turned to him. "What do you want?" He met her gaze without armor, without distance. "I want you to choose freely. Not because you're protected. Not because you're powerful. Because you want to stay." She thought of the alley. The cold. The phone call made with shaking hands. Then she smiled, soft, certain. "I already chose," she said. Slowly, deliberately she took his hand. Gasps rose from below as the court watched from the terrace. Watched the vampire king bow his head, not in submission but in respect. "Elara hail," he said, voice low and steady. "Stand with me, not above, not beneath. Beside." She squeezed his hand. "Only if we change things." His lips curved into a smile the world had never seen. Together. Weeks passed. Elara did not vanish into luxury. She rebuilt. Shelters were funded. Laws enforced. Hunters punished. Humans protected, not as pets, not as prey, but as people. And at Alaric's side, she became something no one had expected. A queen who listened. A queen who remembered hunger. A queen who knew that true power was choosing mercy when vengeance was easier. One evening, as stars spilled across the sky, Alaric found her in the garden where it had all begun. "You never asked for immortality," he said quietly. She smiled. "I asked for safety. And love." She turned to face him, eyes bright. "That came when you answered the phone." He laughed softly, an unfamiliar sound, warm and human. "Elara," he said, taking her hands. "I love you. Not as a king. Not as a protector. As a man who was lost until you called." She rose onto her toes and kissed him, slow, sure, unafraid. "I love you too," she whispered. "And I'm not afraid of what comes next." He rested his forehead against hers. "Neither am I." Far below, the city glowed with life. And above it all, a new story settled into place, not one of monsters and victims but of choice, justice, and love. She had been homeless. She had been powerless. She had been unheard. Now she was queen. And the world would never forget the night a single call changed everything.
Together we stand forever.